We're now joined by Baylor Running Backs Coach A.J. Steward, who's been, of course, focused in on the weekend and everything else as the newest member of the Baylor coaching staff with Dave Aranda. A.J. Coach Steward, thanks for your time. What are the things right now you're focused on? Is it recruiting? Is it learning your running backs room? What are the priorities for you at this time?
Well, I think at this unique stage when me getting here, I think you have to do both. I think recruiting is very important as well, but the most important, in my mind, is always the players. So those are the guys. Obviously, the guys we're recruiting. Hopefully they will become our players, but I do think it's really important to start with good foundation with the guys in our room and all that. And so I've been trying my best to do both. And I think things have been progressing in the right direction in each area. This first week, me being here, but definitely I think both are very important, and I think it's really important for our guys here to get to know me and start that process of building trust and things like that. And so, try my best to do both.
Coach, if I was going to pick a position where if I was the coach of that position and stepping into a room with depth on this roster, it would probably be running back, where you step into a room that has Richard Reese, who is fantastic. Quaylen Jones really started to find himself. You've got some players that are going to have to come back from injury but have a lot of potential. You've got some incoming players that are really exciting. What have you thought about those guys so far, as you've gotten in and started getting into the nuts and bolts of who they are?
Obviously the film and their tape speaks for itself, but I've been really pleased with just the type of young men they are, who they are off the field, and their work ethic and what people say about them. That's really the best part of those guys to me. I think, like you said, they all know, and we all know they're very talented. But when you're first walking into a situation, the people, who they are as a person, means a lot, in our ability to work together moving forward to try to continue to develop their game and help their film just continue to progress and help them, continue to evolve as people and players. And so that's been really encouraging for me, just getting to know these guys, sitting down, looking them eye to eye, just seeing and having a feel for who they are as people. And that's honestly what I'm most excited about. And them being really good players, obviously helps it. And I think we'll be able to do some great things, because of both of those factors.
So, Coach, you mentioned the timing. Everything's just kind of crazy and getting acclimated. But can you take us just through the timing of how this all unfolded for you to arrive in Waco? I mean, obviously, Baylor was in need of a running backs coach, and otherwise, I mean, as you have another title as well, it's obviously important, but just kind of take us through your side of things as far as getting that phone call, the initial interest, and how you ultimately ended up here.
Well, we had a good year, at Oregon State. Mm-hmm. And so had a lot of success really the last two seasons, but this year was, we had a lot of success. And so honestly, I wasn't, in a position in my mind, to have to leave or go anywhere. But I'll say, when Coach Aranda and Coach Grimes give you a call, I think there's always going to be something that you're going to have to take into consideration, with their pedigree and my previous experience with Coach Grimes and Coach Mateos and even Dennis Polian, our chief of staff, working with those guys and just knowing the type of people they are. Though when I got the phone call, it automatically was something that I had to, look into. And I just thought it'd be a great opportunity. Obviously, the identity of our running back group, like you alluded to, previously, just, knowing that we value running the football here, the quality of the room, the quality of people in the building. Those are the factors that, that make these type of decisions tough. Like I said, when you're in a pretty good situation, but they make you feel pretty good about, making that decision as well, just because of those factors. And so, I was, it wasn't something that I thought was going to happen, play out. It kind of just fell out of the sky, but it was something I know that God really placed in front of me, as far as just a great opportunity to be around good people and to continue to move forward, in my journey as a coach. And just feel like it's an assignment from God to be here, and be able to work with these people in the building and the players that we have in this program.
AJ, do you feel like had you met Dave Aranda at all prior to coming to Baylor?
Yes, I mean I've met him, through passing, and we have some mutual friends in the profession, who have worked with him in the past and things like that. And obviously knowing Coach Grimes really well, and from our time at BYU and Coach Mateos, you hear really good things about him and how the culture is in the building and the things he's, his standards that he sets in a program. I think those factor in when you're making a tough decision, and to be able to rely on people that I trust and respect in this profession, who say really good things about him. I think that helped the decision become even easier.
So if I'm going to make a running back for the wide zone out of Clay, what do I have to make sure he has?
I think number one, you got to be tough. I think people, when they think of wide zone, they think of outside zone, or we're just trying to outrun people around the perimeter. But really, in my mind, it's a vertical play. It's a downhill. We want to make a 1-foot cut. So I think acceleration, physicality, and I think this is the type of scheme. And I've told my guys that contact's going to be inevitable. So number one, you have to protect yourself, but we're going to get hit anyway, so we might as well be the ones, laying the hammer down on the defenders so that we're falling forward and we're just making people tackles for 4 quarters. And that's always the goal, when you play in this scheme. And when I think it's the mindset's changed a little bit across college football. When you bring up the word wide zone, you don't think of it as a finesse, style of offense, but we want to make sure that we let people know when they watch that film that this is a very physical downhill offense, and we'll circle the field if you allow us to, but we really want to put a foot in the ground and be physical and just grind it out, make you tackles for 4 quarters.
You mentioned some of the guys that you had previous experience and relationships with in Polian and Mateos and Grimes. What's it like to be back on a staff with all of those guys interacting and mingling once again, all for the same team?
Well, they're all guys that I've stayed in touch with. That kind of tells you what type of people they are, and that we haven't lost touch. And it hasn't been too long since we've worked together. It's been in the recent past, but I think it just, once again, it just makes you feel better walking into a new situation, to know, at least have a few people, that are familiar faces in the building that you can come up to and ask the questions, that maybe be a silly question, but you're just want to make sure you're on the same page and you don't want to offend the culture that's already been set. So you might ask, hey, what type of shirt do we need to wear to that event or whatever, and just to have that, and some guys that you trust, that you don't feel like you're bothering them. I think that always kind of helps when you're transitioning the way that I am right now.
The running backs room, you mentioned downhill, you're going to have contact. There's a couple of running backs, and I'm not trying to act like I'm an X and O's guys, but Dominic Richardson, the transfer, Quaylon Jones are bangers. They're downhill, but at times they probably need to avoid some of the contact as well. And then, of course, you have Tay McWilliams, who last year got knocked out early. He's physical as well. Jordan Jenkins hasn't played much, and I think he even had an injury last year. You've got bangers, right? Can you tell that by just being around the fellas and even watching what you've watched?
Absolutely. And the way that in physicality in my mind is yards after contact. Mm-hmm. It's not we're not looking to make contact necessarily. We're looking for the path of least resistance, but understanding that contact's inevitable, when you're running the ball between the tackles. And so we put a lot of time in creating muscle memory on how to, and once again, to me, being a physical team, I'm teaching these guys techniques that are going to protect them, from, getting banged up. And it's already a physical position. I'm trying to, number one, protect them when that contact comes, but also prepare them to have an opportunity to be able to add yards after contact. And so we spend the majority of our time, once we kind of iron out the reads and our tracks and things like that in the run game, we really spend a ton of time on our tools for that second level, that from the line of scrimmage to, linebacker level, in those things. And so really I'm teaching them to protect themselves. And then I'm also want to teach those guys to be able to, effectively avoid it. But having a physical mindset behind it, not running away from people, but running running through people in a way that it's not going to accumulate over a game on us, but it'll accumulate on the defense.
Did you at any time, just because of it's your position and you're a college football coach, ever see a highlight of Richard Reese thinking that one day, not that you think you're going to coach him, but how he was able to like slip through a keyhole a little bit and have the kind of just those instincts as a running back?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a big fan. I've always been a big fan of what has been, done here at Baylor, offensively. And so I watched as many games as I could, and a huge fan of Richard Reese. And we had a true freshman last year who was kind of neck and neck with him all year as far as yards. And so I was kind of peeking over my shoulder at him as well. Not rooting against him, but hoping our guy would beat him out yards-wise, throughout the season. So I had a really a good amount of respect for him, and he kept putting pressure on our guy all year. There are two freshmen kind of going at it, in the yards battle. And so I've watched a ton of film on him, even far before I even, thought I would be, his coach. And so it made it easy. I kind of already know what I'm going to get out of him just from studying him from afar, and just who he is as a person, just getting to know him now. I'm even more excited, to be able to coach him.
You didn't say his name, but I will. Damian Martinez from Louisville, Texas. He had a terrific year last year. And also, I do some stuff with an award, and the Earl Campbell Award. And so every week I'm checking box scores from players from the state of Texas, and he was every week somebody that I had to pay attention to. And then B.J. Baylor the year before was another Texas guy. And I know you've had history in Texas, but you know a thing or two. You've been around some Texas running backs lately, haven't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've always, even when I have worked outside of the state, I always come back here to try to find my guys for my room, even if it wasn't a main area. I really have a ton of respect for how these guys get developed, the type of off-season training they put in, the quality of coaching they get before they get to us. And so I've had a lot of success, obviously with coaching guys that played high school ball in Texas. And so it's like coming back home for me, in that regard. When you look at our whole group, these guys they played high school ball other than Dom, played high school ball in Texas. I guess Cayenne as well. And so majority of those guys have played, high school ball in Texas. And I just think that the coaches do a great job of preparing them for us, and we just kind of add more value, and we have a little more time with them than they do. And so, it's been great.
Okay, you're back in the Big 12. You're a KU guy here, back in the Big 12. But you were recruited as a quarterback, then you moved to wide receiver, and then you wound up at tight end. How did that happen? Was that just the natural progression? Was that a love of sandwiches? Like, what happened
Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches
from quarterback to tight end?
Well, I picked the University of Kansas because I wanted to play quarterback, and they had this little scrawny quarterback that was only a year older than me, who I thought, I'm gonna go out there and I'll beat this dude out, and he just became the all-time greatest quarterback in program history. And they asked me, did I want to wait it out until he graduated, or if I wanted to go play some football, and I couldn't stand sitting on that bench, freshman year. And so I said, Coach, whatever I need to do to special teams or whatever I'll do. And so they moved me to slot receiver originally. It's kind of a hybrid H-back back then. And then we had a coaching change, and I ended up eventually eating my way up to a real true tight end. And so that's kind of how it happened. But I was grateful to be a part of that time. Had some good moments, and if I were a coach, I would play Ty Reesing over me 100 times in a row. I thought he was great even when we were playing together. I never felt like I should have played over him or anything. But it was a great time, and I think it ended up ultimately being great for me as a coach because I had to relearn things that weren't natural to me. I had to learn how to use technique in the blocking game, and I had to learn how to run routes, and I had to learn how to use my hands and be physical, and how the game can take a toll on you, as a tight end. And so I think obviously back then I didn't even really know I would progress into my career the way that I have, but I think I learned a lot of lessons during that time. just grateful that I'm a better coach than a football player. I don't know if I'd be here.
AJ, stop. And by the way, we had Todd Reesing on when Kansas had that great start and, of course, their best season since back in the day when you were a part of that team in 2007. How proud were you, even though now they're an opponent and a Big 12 conference rival, how proud were you to be a Jayhawk alum and watch what they did this year with Coach, I just went blank.
Leipold.
Coach Leipold, excuse me.
Yeah, I think anytime, you root for your alma mater, especially if you don't have to play against them, so it was a little easier last year and in the prior, years to look at them from afar, but it's, a ton of respect for what they've done. And, there's the first time going to a bowl game this season since I played, and so that kind of tells you the job that they've done. And so you definitely, even if you weren't a part of that, if you didn't play there, I think everybody just had a ton of respect for what they did. And, that was a tremendous, accomplishment, just getting over the hump and doing that. And so ton of respect for what they're doing over there. I'm a fan of great coaches and great people. And so, whether they're a rival or in-conference opponent, I'm always going to give respect where it's due. And so I definitely think they deserve respect.
I've heard, and I don't know if this is true in the business, but are running backs coaches usually one of the best recruiters on a staff?
I think you can make a case for it. I think every staff's different. I think to me there's a difference between recruiting and evaluating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think a lot of guys are really good recruiters. They can sign a bunch of guys, but I think the real value is the evaluators and what those guys do when they get on campus. And so I've seen great recruiters at all positions, and I just think, to me, I've always looked at it as that, not necessarily how many guys we can sign that didn't necessarily help our program. I look at it more as were we pinpointing the right guys, that we get really good guys for our culture that, impact our culture in a positive way. And then are these guys helping us, make plays on Saturdays as well? And so it depends on what perspective you look at it from. But I think there is there's kind of a stereotype at times in college football that, the running backs coach is the recruiter guy. But I know a lot of running back coaches too, and I know there's a ton of really good coaches who are good recruiters as well. And so they're not just a one-trick pony, so to speak. And they take pride in all facets of the profession.
What have you heard or felt along the way? I know a dead period's about to hit because that national signing period's the next week, but in Baylor's class is pretty much all but wrapped up. But being out on the road in the last few days, what have you felt as far as when you walk in the door, you talk to a prospect about being the running backs coach at Baylor?
I think, and I was telling a buddy this the other day, just the first few days being out, just the amount of respect that people around the state of Texas have for what Coach Aranda has done here at Baylor is you can feel it. When you walk in, they say it verbally, but there's a different type of respect that you get, than other times in my career where I stepped foot in the school, and I've never necessarily been disrespected, but you could just tell there's been a really good connection with the high school coaches here. I think the recognition, from a prospect standpoint has been really good. I think people look at Baylor as a place where you can come and play big time football, and be coached and developed, as well as, being a really good culture. And I think things that, they think of it as a place that's going to add value to your life as well. And so I could just feel that, throughout my interactions with the coaches. And, I think there's a lot of respect when people see, when you walk in with the Baylor logo on it. So that makes my job obviously a lot easier, coming in as a first-time recruiter. And I appreciate the guys, the foundation they've laid here. And so they've made my job a lot easier, stepping into this situation.
All right, last thing, AJ. A lot of people, fans, even media, a coach leaves, somebody else comes in, obviously the credentials or whatever. But this is personal, too, because you have to uproot, even though I don't think you have any children yet, but you and your wife will be in Waco. And you were there, obviously, in Corvallis. And coaches move along. What's it like at times, the transient nature of being a college football coach?
It's we actually do. We have two little boys,
Oh,
a
okay.
4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and so that adds a different layers to it. I think it's an aspect that people don't really they don't really keep perspective on at times. You know, when these moves happen and all that, it is it can be a challenging time depending on the nature of why you're moving, but it can also be an added stress and anxiety as well, just being away from your family. And so definitely, obviously, as a coach, going through it and have gone through it from many different aspects throughout my career, I just always have kind of a respect and a grace, for coaches who go through it, whether it be, a big time opportunity or they were let go and so they're transitioning to another opportunity. I just think it's something that it probably doesn't get taken into consideration when people look into these coaching changes and things like that. But I think the families are rock stars, and the wives, my wife for sure, I wouldn't be able to do this without her. I mean, she's holding down the fort with our two boys right now, and you're trying to FaceTime two little toddlers, and they say hi and then they run away and go play with toys, and so it can wear on you a little bit, but it's that God's called you to this assignment. And I think when you do it for the right reasons, I think your family, they understand the sacrifice, and there's real fruit that comes from it, in the long term, when maybe they may not see it now, but when they look back in 20 years from now, when, Richard Reese comes and gives you a big hug at, some event, and he's a grown man with kids of his own, they realize, like, man, Dad really had a real impact on people, and it wasn't just, winning a bunch of football games and things like that. And so that's what makes it, I think, doable, when you are, doing this, as an assignment, in your mind, and not, we're not just doing this to progress our career or, different things like that. And so I think it's important for us to keep that in mind moving forward, and as just the people that are in the situation, the strain that it can cause on our families. But for me, it makes me wake up in the morning and want to really have true bonds with people and try to make positive interactions with people in our building, knowing the sacrifice that our family, puts up with, just for us to be able to do this.
Well, and that's why I asked, because sometimes I think we do not think about that enough, the transition, the moving from here and there. AJ, it's great to have you today. Appreciate you. Welcome to Waco. Welcome to Baylor as far as being on the staff. Look forward to talking to you again soon, and thanks for your time.
Likewise. Thank you guys for having me.
You too. That's AJ Steward, running back coach at Baylor on 365 Sports.
Assistant head coach.